The cafeteria was filled with noise, shouting, laughter, trays clattering, but at one corner, a boy sat alone, quietly eating his sandwich as if he were invisible. His name was Ethan Cole, a thin, bespectacled kid whose silence made him a target. Today, though, something was different. A group of boys stood behind him, snickering, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. "Hey, Einstein," one of them called. "You building rockets again or just talking to aliens?" The table burst into laughter. Ethan didn't look up. He just pushed his glasses up his nose and continued scribbling in his notebook filled with complex symbols and drawings. To them it looked like gibberish, but to him, it was the design of something extraordinary. Ethan had always been the quiet type, not because he was shy, but because the world in his head was louder than the one around him. His mother, a nurse working double shifts, used to tell him he had an old soul and a wild brain. He had no father. He'd left when Ethan was 5. But that only made Ethan more determined to build things that lasted. Every night after finishing homework, he stayed up tinkering with wires, solar panels, and circuits in his small garage. While other kids were scrolling through TikTok or playing video games, Ethan was learning about propulsion systems and AI architecture from online lectures. No one knew that the boy they called Nerd had already been accepted into a summer internship program with NASA's engineering division. But Ethan didn't tell anyone. He knew people only saw what they wanted to see. His school was like most American high schools, hallways filled with gossip, groups that never mixed, teachers trying to hold everything together. For Ethan, it was survival mode every day. He sat alone in class, spoke only when called on, and spent lunch breaks finishing equations. The teachers admired him quietly but didn't intervene much. Kids like Ethan existed in the background, forgotten until someone decided to make them the center of a cruel joke, and that joke came soon enough. During a science presentation, Ethan's team was supposed to show their project on renewable energy. But his so-called partners, Derek and Kyle, had other plans. When Ethan set up his model on the table, Derek whispered something to the crowd. A moment later, a video started playing on the classroom screen. It was Ethan, sitting alone in the cafeteria, muttering equations to himself, recorded without his knowledge. The class roared with laughter. Ethan froze, his face turning pale. "You're such a freak," Kyle said between laughs. "NASA should hire you to clean their bathrooms." The teacher tried to restore order, but the damage was done. Ethan stood there silently, holding the model he'd worked on for weeks, watching as his classmates pointed and laughed. That night, Ethan sat in his garage, staring at his unfinished prototype. His mother found him there, silent tears running down his face. "They laughed at me, Mom," he said softly. "They think I'm crazy." She placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "Then show them what crazy can do." Those words lit something inside him. Over the next few days, Ethan stopped talking altogether, but he worked harder than ever. He rebuilt his project from scratch, added new components, even integrated a small AI interface he'd been designing secretly. His classmates didn't notice him anymore, assuming he'd given up. But Ethan was preparing for something bigger. 2 weeks later, the school held its annual science fair. The gym buzzed with parents, teachers, and local reporters. Derek and Kyle stood proudly by their store-bought volcano, still smirking whenever Ethan passed. But when it was Ethan's turn, the room went quiet. He walked up to his table, placed his hand on a small device, and said calmly, "Initiate prototype sequence." The machine hummed, lights flickering softly before a miniature drone lifted off the table and began mapping the gym in 3D, projecting a holographic layout of the entire building in real time. Gasps filled the room. "This," Ethan said, his voice steady, "is an adaptive mapping drone designed for disaster response and planetary exploration. It's currently being tested at NASA." The crowd erupted in applause. Teachers stared in disbelief. His mother, standing at the back, wiped a tear. The principal approached the stage, smiling. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "Ethan Cole has been working with NASA's Youth Innovation Team for 6 months. We're proud to call him one of ours." Derek and Kyle's faces turned pale. The same boys who once laughed at him now stood frozen, eyes wide with regret. One of them tried to mutter an apology, but Ethan didn't need to hear it. He simply smiled, the quiet kind that says, "I've already forgiven you, but I'll never forget." In the days that followed, things changed. Teachers started using Ethan's project as an example of perseverance. The bullies stopped laughing, and for once they listened. But Ethan didn't let the praise get to his head. He still sat at the same lunch table, still worked late in the garage, still dreamed of the stars. Because for him, success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving himself right. One afternoon, as he packed his books, a younger student approached him shyly and said, "Hey, Ethan, I want to build something too. Will you teach me?" Ethan smiled and nodded. That small moment meant more to him than any applause. He realized then that geniuses don't shine alone. They light the way for others. Years later, when a rocket launched from Cape Canaveral carrying technology partially designed by Ethan Cole, he watched it rise into the sky and whispered the words that had carried him through every storm. They laughed because they didn't understand. And that's okay. The stars always look small from far away.